Query, does Amanda have to pace like that? Amanda couldn't really do anything to help Spot and Fleur, as shooting things in the face real good doesn't help with medical procedures. In addition, letting an untrained Terran loose in a facility filled with sensitive medical equipment and dangerous chemicals was a quick way to blow up a moon. This left Amanda with the only real option to nervously pace around the small break room. Well, you're the one who said I had to stay here. Amanda didn't like waiting. There was always something to do or some task that needed completing, even if it was as simple as maintenance. This meant that right now, she had no idea what to do with herself. Responding query, I said that having the Terran roaming freely around sensitive materials would not have positive outcomes. I did not intend for that to mean you must remain in the same 1-foot area. Steve was obviously also in the break room, hovering as always, keeping an eye on the Terran to make sure they didn't set fire to something. Or cover it in cheese, or set fire to something while covering it in cheese. Next to the Scythian and slumped in a chair was the last unaccounted-for member of the research team, Baith. The Hatil had mostly followed the others out of a curiosity about the Terran. Amanda gave a sigh, flopping down onto a seat and tapping her fingers on a table, before pulling a Galnet connector out of her pocket and staring at it for a moment. How the hell has it only been 20 minutes? Amanda exclaimed loudly, clearly frustrated. So, how do you and Spot know each other? From the sounds of it, you both go way back. Baith asked this with a smile, half with actual curiosity, half so that Amanda would be distracted enough to stop fidgeting while waiting for Fleur's treatment to finish. It seemed to partially work, as the Terran returned the smile as she responded. You could say that. Originally got him from a neighbor whose dog had just had a litter of puppies. Cute as a button and super smart even before the uplifting. Been my best friend ever since. The distraction seemingly worked as Amanda gave a nostalgic smile on remembering Spot as a puppy. Didn't originally plan on getting it done, but then the military started paying for regenerations and uplifts. Just had to stick around for 4 years and then figured I'd give Spot the ability to think and I'd get to live forever. Amanda gave a small chuckle at that joke. Just 4 years. 200 years later, with a few gaps here or there, she had been doing the same job. Still, she'd been competent at it, enjoyed it, and overall, it had been worth it. At least until it turned out that you couldn't trust other Terrans. Wait, you were part of the military? That's so cool! The curiosity flowed out of Baith, getting more animated and enthusiastic as she spoke. Is that how you managed to kill the Raha prince? The Zorthian mentioned some of it. One Terran army like some kind of action movie. Exasperated statement, Baith, that is not polite to discuss. Our apologies to Amanda. Steve was flashing the purple and black hue of annoyance, causing the Hatil opposite them to deflate a little. Sorry, don't you worry about it. Water under a bridge. The Terran waved off the apology before getting back up and making her way over to the break room's replicator. Though if this is what we're blabbering about, then I reckon this ain't a sober conversation. Amanda pressed a few inputs on the machine, before frowning and pressing a few more, ending with a flat-out scowl and giving the machine a hefty thump. What the hell is wrong with this? Explaining query, all replicators in the research facility cannot create mind-altering substances to avoid potential incidences. The frown on Amanda's face deepened even further, before pressing a few more buttons and procuring a piece of gum, chewing it up quickly before returning it back to its aluminium packaging. Learned this trick in basic. Watch closely. Baith leaned forwards to watch closer as the Terran procured a knife from her side, jamming it into a crack in the replicator's casing. With one swift movement, she popped the side cover off before delicately placing the gum-covered wrapper in a specific location. You just gotta pop the side off, then make sure the ends are touching that weird L-looking piece and the smiley face circuit, then reboot it and... There was a moment delay as the replicator rebooted itself. Then with a satisfied look, Amanda pressed the inputs once again, this time procuring a bottle of beer from the machine. Just make sure you remove it before anyone comes round, and unless someone checks the logs, there ain't no trace. Holy shit, you are now my new favorite person! Baith jumped up excitedly from her seat, pumping both adorable paws into the air as she proclaimed her newfound friendship with the alcohol-supplying Terran. Statement, This is against the Terran Alliance Scientific Progress Initiative guidelines. The Scythen remained colorless, no emotions feeding through as Amanda rolled her eyes. If Squidward don't want any, I ain't forcing you. Clarifying statement, I never said that. Make mine a Kirkenskoracta. It had been around 2 hours of talking and drinking, a time period that could be measured more by the bottles and glasses stacked up on the table in front of the three. The conversation with Amanda was more than pleasant, especially considering that the Terran was a fountain of information regarding their co-worker and mutual friend. Often embarrassing information. So Spot is stood up on the stage right, just having finished pre-med and obviously gets to do the Wasset name, the speech you give for being top of your class. Amanda clicked her fingers repeatedly trying to remember the word before being helped by the Scythen. Aiding statement, valedictorian address. That's the one! So he stood there giving his talk, standing in his fancy robe. I'm proud as punch of the little guy. When suddenly he just stops, stares out into the university grounds and shouts squirrel at the top of his voice before taking a flying leap off the stage. Wait, really? Faith had a shocked smile across her face, expression stuck in incredulous mirth. We're talking about the same Spot here, right? The guy who wrote half the research papers I studied at uni? Amanda took a moment to take another swig of beer with a smirk before continuing with her story. Back then, the uplift stuff was kinda new, so the balance between instinct and not hadn't been dialed in yet. You get it wrong and you end up with a dude with a degree climbing a tree chasing vermin. There was a good 30 seconds of that, then Spot just climbed back down, walks back up that stage, and just continues where he left off while still covered in half a bush. If he ever gets too big for his britches, just shout squirrel at him, embarrasses the heck out of him. A small amount of drunken giggling continued among the group, the thought of the well-respected doctor chasing after a squirrel entering the trio's mind. Contemplative statement, it is strange to consider that Spot started out life non-sapient. Steve was a curious blue color as he poured some more alcoholic beverage into his feeding tubes. It's just how it is. They've always been man's best friends, so as soon as we could bring him along for the ride, we did. Amanda responded with a smile. I got pictures if you want to see 'em. More than anything, yes. The Hattel almost sent the gin and tonic she was drinking to the ground as Baith gave an excited clap, catching the offending glass before it tumbled off the table. The grin didn't leave Baith's face as Amanda fumbled with her Galnet connector, eventually showing the group an old picture of the adorable black Labrador puppy that would later become Spot. The group quietened down a little, the current conversation thread running its course as they continued to nurse their drinks. It was the Scythen who picked the conversation back up, more serious this time. Asking query, do you believe anything could come of the Raha situation, any other species the Astorians would declare war? Even if they did, the Terrans would just blow up a planet then become their best friend, Baith responded matter-of-factly, confident in her assessment of Terrans. A Terran can't go pick up fuel without making 3 new friends and adopting a wild animal. Amanda's face soured for a moment, mood turning more somber with this line of discussion. This would be different. Astorians are slaving assholes who are an actual threat, not just an incident or a bust-up. Things tend to get out of hand with us when an actual war is on the table. Dismissive statement, I never understood why Terrans have such a negative view of themselves. The only species to have a negative inclination to Terrans, the friendliest species in the galaxy, are Terrans themselves. The statement from Steve got a small smile out of Amanda, who simply finished off her current drink before continuing. I reckon it won't matter. They'll throw a hissy fit, but neither side really wants a fight. We'll just go back to the galactic I'm not touching you game. They'd have to do something really stupid for it to go further.